real quick perspective here. You look back in many people's lifetimes here, President Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, as we all now know, couldn't walk. The vast majority of the American public didn't know that. That was not reported because there was a sense, that, okay, he has leg braces, his sons hold him up, and, if that's the way that he wants to present himself to the American people, that's the way that the press corps is going to allow him to present himself. Now, every flaw, be it physical or verbal or political or, moral, certainly is exposed. And it's very difficult for anyone, to live under that kind of scrutiny.
I read some information recently that most adults 18 to 30 years old, actually get their news and information, political news and information in particular, from Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart and folks like David Letterman. So what does satire or satirical comedy have, what role does it play in this political discussion, especially at this time?
Big and getting bigger. Just last night, maybe some of you saw, NBC took prime time and they had a half-hour Saturday Night Live special when, after 4 years, the first presidential transition we hear of is there's a new Barack Obama imitator on Saturday Night Live, who just got passed the torch in the season opener last Saturday. But the influence goes beyond all of us as viewers and voters. The influence is probably most felt with other journalists. Many journalists have gone on the record, and I've heard many off the record as well, greatly admire the amount of research that Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert do, and also their ability, certainly their willingness, but their ability to say things that they wish that they could. Because to some journalists, and this does not mean that every journalist is as left-leaning as Jon Stewart, and if you watch him carefully, he can go after the Democrats just as viciously as he does the Republicans. But he cuts through a lot of the standard objective model of he said, she said, playing off journalism, and gets to the heart of the matter, and many people feel can thus tell the truth more effectively. So once it's out there, I think it influences the news narrative in terms of how reporters often go about their jobs and how they report about not just politicians, but the media, which is often, the recipient of a lot of his sharpest barbs. So I think that the impact is very, very big.
So now I'm going to play the role of Phil Donahue and make sure that I get some questions from the audience here. Consider it sort of the lightning round, if you will. I saw the hand go up back here.
Here we are very close to our election, and we're about to get into the presidential debates. And you would think that most voters have probably made decisions. What real effect do the debates have traditionally on the election results? And are all the debates equal, or is it only the first debate that really makes a difference? I'm curious as to what your thoughts are.
That's a really good question, and thank you for it. And when they take public opinion polls, voters say they're least influenced by campaign commercials. And honestly, and someone who was in the commercial business for 25 years and greatly respect it and know the role that it plays in media, most people, any kind of commercial, don't want to say they're overly easily swayed by that they make their own decisions, particularly with politics. What they do say is most influential is the debates. Now, whether they are or not, again, is somewhat difficult to isolate because most who will go all the way to watch the debates have had thousands of more points of stimuli, throughout the election season. How I think they really matter are often as exercises of confirmation. If you believe in a candidate or if you are leaning in a certain direction and the candidate performs, and this is a standard media jargon, but I think really important in this case, up to expectation, then I think that they can, really help accomplish a candidate's objective. If we look at, and so the expectation game is often what to watch in terms of, already you have the Democrats and the people from President Obama's campaign saying, hey, we don't take Governor Romney lightly. He cleaned the clocks of the other Republican candidates during the debates, and they had a record amount of them, and those of you who saw them, he did very, very well. He was quite quick on his feet and had very strong answers, and I think that helped him win the Republican nomination. President Obama, of course, comes in with a reputation and a record of eloquence in terms of his ability, to speak in soaring rhetoric, and also a quick quip as well, and he's really good. So both are trying to play the expectation game of how they see each other. I think they often matter most in two ways. One, if there's someone who doesn't have a reputation for doing as well. I say this with no partisanship at all, but Republicans especially said in the year 2000 that Governor Bush was not a particularly skilled debater or good communicator from there. You go back and watch those debates, he did quite fine, and most public opinion polls, and eventually the one that really counted in early November, indicated that that's probably where he won the election over the vice president of a very popular incumbent, President Clinton. He beat Al Gore, of course. Or if people make a really significant gaffe, just think about Governor Perry this year, and at least I, and probably a whole lot of people in this room, whether you agreed with a single word he's thought or how he governs, the degree to which he froze in the debate when asked, what 3 departments he'd eliminate, and he could only name 2, and with multiple gaffes, all the way back to 1976, and maybe the most famous gaffe in presidential debate history, where President Ford, who was quite a smart man and quite a skilled man, and historians look back and give him great credit for a lot he did in his presidency. He got in a debate during the height of the Cold War and in effect said that Eastern Europe was not under the domination of the Soviet Union, and that probably did it right there in what ended up to be a very close election. So a gaffe really can count, but in general I think they confirm more than anything.
Question right here.
I think one of the unfortunate things that happened in this country was the Supreme Court decision that created really super PACs. And today, it used to be that the candidate had to be at the end of the ad saying, "I'm Gary Marquardt and I approve this message." Now that's 1 in 10, and the rest of them at the bottom, it should say, "We're a super PAC and we were able to tell you a big lie here," and give the candidate plausible deniability. Will we ever get rid of this horrible pall on our political system?
Full disclosure, and any of you who've read my column, I concur with your assessment. I don't think that the Citizens United ruling was healthy for our democracy. But like everyone here, we all stood up and said the Pledge of Allegiance, and we all have a deep belief in abiding respect for our country, and certainly for the Supreme Court, it's the law of the land. I think the greater disappointment is once this ruling was made, there was a bipartisan consensus, and many Republicans, and I single them out here, and I'll explain why in a minute, said very clearly that they were all for disclosure, that okay, we're going to have unlimited spending, but if you, as a voter, know who's behind this, in terms of the organization, who raises the money, who contributes the money and all that, then you're well informed and you can make your own decision. Well, multiple bills, including one sponsored by Representative Chris Van Hollen of Maryland, I spoke to him directly a couple times about this for my column writing, they've been blocked on an absolute party line vote, Republicans versus Democrats. So one can be a Republican, one can be a Democrat. I, especially as a journalist, believe full disclosure is always in the best interest of everyone, regardless of what party or if they affiliate with no party, to know. So I think this is yet just another example of the gridlock gripping Washington, D.C. and the country, but perhaps there will be another attempt for more disclosure as time goes on. I do think the law will be the law of the land for a while, and I don't think we're going to see any significant shifts. And I do think it bears to say that, while some people initially thought that this would overwhelmingly favor the Republicans, the Democrats have had no problem raising a whole lot of money on their own and from their particular interest groups as well. So.
All right, question right here.
Star Tribune has a reputation for being very liberal in its viewpoint, but I love going to the opinion page and reading George Will and a wide variety of commentators. What's your official policy and practice and philosophy on who gets included?
That's a great question. First of all, thank you for reading. We really appreciate it. And especially someone, who recognizes, that we have a perception problem, and my colleagues would say the same. I say this not in response to you, but just in general to that question, and then I'll get into the other answer of it. We also sometimes have a perception problem with the other side, and we heard about it from an avalanche of letters when we endorsed Senator Coleman over Al Franken for the Senate race, and we endorsed a Republican who had turned independent for the most recent governor's race. So there are plenty of Democrats who are upset with us as well, and maybe we're doing right if everyone's mad at us, but we certainly wish everyone loved us as well. So in terms of who gets in, we have a commentary editor who makes that decision. I think it's a good thing that there is not in any way a quota policy. What he is looking for is always something that's smart, and I think that's a great place to start. You're kind enough to read us, people are kind enough to pay for us, or go online and find us. We should give them value for their money and give them something good to think about. We certainly try to have ideological balance and also topic balance, where we're not talking about the marriage amendment every single day, and then some days we're talking about the Middle East and some of the challenges, including today, as you know, that are going on there. And we do try to look for a variety of voices in so many different ways, certainly, an ideological balance, but also in many ways a local versus national balance, in terms of we want to hear from as many local voices as well. It's not an exact science, as you may well imagine, and we are and will continue to be the subject of criticism, but I guess I would say I'm proud of the job my colleague does, and I hope many of you who are consistent readers realize that we are indeed trying to reflect the great variety of voices that exist here.
Well, John and Susan, thank you ever so much for today. Program. It went in 5 minutes. In both of your names, we will put a book in the Fair Downtown District School, very appropriately Dick and Jane, Susan and John, that will ask you to sign and put a few words in there. So thank you ever so much. It was a terrific program. Looking forward to seeing everyone next week. It's Pam Costain, Achieve Minneapolis. John and Susan will be available for questions afterwards. Thank you so much. See you next week.